What would drive someone to betray the very person they've shared their life with? What could possibly break a bond so deep, so seemingly unshakable, that it would lead one to commit the unthinkable? We often hear that twins share an undeniable connection, a bond that goes beyond the ordinary, that makes them almost inseparable. But what happens when that connection turns toxic, when love morphs into obsession and rivalry consumes everything in its path? There's a dark side to this bond, a side that's hidden in plain sight, festering beneath the surface. And it's here, in the shadows of what seems like an ordinary world, that a story unfolds. A story of two people whose desires would ultimately tear everything apart. What began as an innocent rivalry between siblings escalated to something far more sinister, as obsession took root and jealousy turned into a deadly force. Imagine, for a moment, that you're trapped in a game of manipulation and deceit. The stakes are high, and the one person closest to you is not just your ally, but your greatest rival. As emotions run wild, what are you willing to do to claim the prize? How far would you go when the only thing standing in your way is someone who shares your very blood? This isn't just a story of sibling rivalry, it's a story of obsession, betrayal, and a chilling path to destruction. It's a story that will make you question the lengths to which people will go when the bonds they once held dear begin to unravel. But there's more to this tale than meets the eye. Beneath the surface of what may appear to be simple jealousy and competition, something darker is at play. And the consequences? They're nothing short of tragic. In this video, we take you into a world where love and loyalty are tested beyond measure, where the choices made in the heat of the moment lead to irreversible consequences. Stay with us, because what follows will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, trust, and the dangerous depths of human nature. Let's start at the beginning. Alicia and Rebecca were born in the quiet town of Willow Creek, a picturesque place where everyone knew everyone. From the moment they entered the world, they were inseparable. Neighbors would often see them holding hands, speaking their own secret language, and finishing each other's sentences. It was a bond that seemed unbreakable, but what seemed like an idyllic connection was only the surface of a deeper, more complicated relationship. One that no one, not even the twins themselves, fully understood. They were more than just sisters. They were almost one in the same. From the earliest moments of their childhood, it seemed impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. But there was something lurking beneath that perfect bond, something that slowly began to shift as they entered their teenage years. As the years passed, something changed. Alicia, the outgoing, charismatic sister, quickly became the center of attention. She was confident, effortlessly charming, and beloved by everyone she met. Rebecca, in contrast, was quieter, more reserved, often living in Alicia's shadow. At first, this wasn't an issue, at least not one that anyone would notice, but behind closed doors, the dynamic was far from perfect. Some would say that Rebecca, although often overlooked, resented living in Alicia's shadow. Others believed she had simply accepted it as her role, the quieter twin, the one who didn't need the spotlight. But what no one could have predicted was the intense turmoil that brewed within Rebecca as she struggled with feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and a quiet yearning for something more. And, as for Alicia, the love and attention she received only seemed to fuel her desire for more. She thrived on being admired, and, unknowingly, began to pull Rebecca further into a web of unspoken competition, where every smile, every compliment, was a reminder of the gap between them. What no one realized, though, was that beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect sisterhood, a dangerous seed had been planted. The jealousy, the longing, and the constant comparison had begun to warp the bond they had once shared so effortlessly. And as the years wore on, those emotions began to ferment, each day creating a more toxic undercurrent between them. Soon, the quiet whispers of jealousy began to grow louder, and what had once been a subtle undercurrent began to bleed into their every interaction. Rebecca no longer accepted her secondary position without question. The feelings she had long suppressed began to manifest in small but unmistakable ways. She found herself questioning Alicia's every move, every word, and Alicia, oblivious to the growing tension, continued to thrive, unaware of the storm quietly brewing behind her. The tipping point came one afternoon when Alicia's laughter echoed down the hall, drawing everyone's attention. Yet again, Rebecca stood there watching, the weight of year comparisons settling heavily on her shoulders. For the first time, she wasn't sure she could hide what was festering inside. And so the rivalry began to take shape. What started as subtle feelings of envy quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. But no one, least of all Alicia and Rebecca, could have imagined the lengths to which this rivalry would go. It wasn't just about boys, popularity, or attention anymore. It became something darker, something that would change the course of both their lives forever. As the bond between them weakened, so too did the line between sisterly affection and the darker forces of jealousy and desire, and soon their worlds would collide in a way no one could have predicted. Everything changed during their senior year of high school. A new boy, Jake, entered their world, sweeping through their small town with the kind of effortless charm that seemed to captivate everyone in his path. Handsome, confident, with a smile that could melt anyone's defenses, he became the object of affection for almost every girl in school. Yet, for Alicia and Rebecca, Jake wasn't just another boy. He was something more, a symbol of what they both craved, but for entirely different reasons. Alicia, always the more outgoing and magnetic twin, had no problem drawing attention to herself. She was the one everyone talked about, the girl who could walk into a room and instantly command it. But when Jake came into the picture, something changed. There was a subtle shift in her usual confidence, the crack in the armor she had worn for so long. Alicia had always been the star of the show, but now there was someone who didn't immediately gravitate toward her. There was someone who could possibly choose Rebecca over her. Rebecca, on the other hand, had spent years living in Alicia's shadow, silently competing for attention in a way that often went unnoticed. Always the quieter twin, always the one who watched from the sidelines as Alicia effortlessly captured the spotlight, Rebecca had learned to be content with being second. But with Jake, something shifted inside her. It wasn't just that he noticed her. It was that he didn't immediately fall for Alicia. For the first time, Rebecca felt like she had a chance to be seen, to be wanted for who she was, not for who she stood beside. Jake's attention made her feel powerful in a way that she had never felt before. For once, she wasn't compared to Alicia. She was her own person. The seeds of rivalry had been planted, but they had never been so obvious before. At first, it was just small things. Alicia's teasing smile when she caught Jake's eye, and Rebecca's defensive body language whenever Alicia spoke to him. The tension between them grew quietly, simmering beneath the surface. No one saw it coming, not their friends, not their parents. But it wasn't long before the dynamics of their relationship began to shift. The lines between affection and jealousy blurred, and both girls found themselves drawn into a battle neither of them was prepared for. Rebecca's jealousy grew steadily. At first, she tried to bury it, convincing herself that she was being silly. After all, Alicia was the outgoing one. She was always the one everyone loved. She could have anyone she wanted. But when Rebecca saw the way Jake looked at Alicia, admiring her with that easy smile, that look that made Rebecca feel invisible, it was like a switch flipped inside her. The quiet resentment she had buried deep within for so many years started to surface. What was it about Alicia that made everyone adore her? Why couldn't she, for once, be the one who had the attention? It wasn't fair. And as she grappled with these feelings, she started to push back in ways that were darker, more calculated. What started as a harmless crush on Jake soon turned into something much deeper, a need to prove herself, to make Alicia feel what she had always felt, invisible and overlooked. Alicia, meanwhile, was losing her grip on the very thing she had always taken for granted. Her charm, her charisma, her ability to capture everyone's attention. It was starting to slip. There was this new boy, Jake, who had turned her world upside down. She wasn't used to feeling threatened, but for the first time, she did. She tried to play it off, to act as if she didn't care that Rebecca seemed to be getting closer to Jake. But deep down, Alicia was terrified. What if Rebecca got to him first? What if Jake preferred her over Alicia? It wasn't supposed to be this way. Alicia had always been the one to get what she wanted. This was supposed to be her time, her chance to shine one last time before graduation. But the more Jake seemed to be drawn to Rebecca's quiet, unassuming nature, the more Alicia fought to keep her hold on him. What started as playful teasing between the sisters quickly turned into something far more sinister. The games they played, flirting, laughing, competing for Jake's attention, became more manipulative. They began to outdo each other in petty ways, each trying to win Jake over in ways that made the other look less desirable. Alicia would pretend to be interested in his favorite band, only to mock it when Rebecca was nearby. Rebecca, in turn, would bring up private moments she had shared with Jake, subtly letting Alicia know that she, too, had his attention. It wasn't just about Jake anymore. It was about proving a point, to themselves and to each other, that they could outdo the other, that they were worthy of his love, his affection, and ultimately, his choice. But things began to spiral out of control as the competition grew more intense. The rivalry between them was no longer about fun and games, it was about winning at any cost. The manipulation grew more severe, the tactics more extreme. Rebecca would make sure she was always around when Jake and Alicia were talking, lingering just a bit longer than necessary, making sure that she too had his attention. Alicia, for her part, started to sabotage Rebecca's chances with Jake in more covert ways. She would tell him little things about Rebecca, half-truths, misunderstandings, things that made Jake question her intentions. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a battle, a war between two sisters, fueled by a desire for love and a desperate need to prove that they were worthy of it. One afternoon, during lunch, Rebecca overheard Jake telling Alicia how he admired her boldness. The words hit her like a slap in the face. Alicia's confident smile, her ability to command attention, had always been something Rebecca could never quite match, and now Jake, the one person Rebecca had hoped might see her, was praising Alicia for it. That moment marked a turning point. Rebecca, always the quiet observer, could feel the anger rising inside her. It was no longer just jealousy. It was something darker, something deeper. She was tired of being in the background, tired of always feeling second best. The feelings of resentment, frustration, and hurt built up over the years had been triggered, and Rebecca's jealousy quickly turned into something more sinister. What once seemed like a harmless crush had now become a life-altering obsession. She wanted Jake. She wanted to be seen, and if Alicia wasn't going to step aside, then Rebecca was willing to do whatever it took to make sure she got what she wanted. But Alicia too wasn't prepared to back down. The pressure to maintain her image, to keep her status as the center of attention, was becoming overwhelming. But she couldn't lose, not to Rebecca, not after everything they had been through. And so, she pushed harder, played dirtier, all in the name of winning Jake's affection. What was once playful flirting was now an all-out war between two sisters fighting for the same boy. The stakes had grown higher, and with every new scheme, the sisters pushed further and further into dangerous territory. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about proving something deeper, something far more personal. The line between affection and rivalry had long since blurred, and what had started as a harmless competition for Jake's attention now seemed like an impossible battle that would never end. And then, one night, everything changed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. It was supposed to be just a harmless game, a test of who could win Jake's heart. But as the rivalry grew, so did the danger. That night, a simple plan, something that seemed innocent enough at the time, spiraled into a series of events no one could have predicted. What began as a fight for attention became something darker, more twisted. And when the dust settled, nothing between them would ever be the same again. Their lives would be changed forever. It was a night the town of Willow Creek would never forget. A night that began like any other, but would end in a way no one could have predicted. The storm rolled in quickly, dark clouds swallowing the sky, casting an eerie shadow over the town. A loud crack of thunder echoed through the streets as lightning illuminated the night. The perfect storm, the kind that always seemed to precede something sinister. The night had begun with a seemingly innocent party at one of Willow Creek's oldest homes. It was the kind of event where everyone in town gathered, catching up with old friends, gossiping about anything and everything. Alicia had arrived first, as always, her infectious smile lighting up the room. She was the life of the party, confident and magnetic. Rebecca followed later, as always, a little more subdued, but still trying to enjoy herself in the shadows of her sister's radiance. But tonight, something was different. The tension between them was palpable. It wasn't just the rivalry over Jake that was growing. It was the years of unspoken resentment, the frustration, the jealousy, and the quiet desperation that had been building up for so long. It was all about to explode. The two sisters found themselves alone in a corner of the room, away from the noise of the party. Rebecca had tried to keep the peace, to pretend that things were normal, but Alicia wasn't having it. Her smile had faded into a smirk, her eyes narrowing as she cornered Rebecca. "You think you can just take him from me, don't you?" Alicia's voice was low, venomous. "Jake doesn't even see you, Rebecca. You're just his backup." Rebecca flinched at the harsh words, the sting of them cutting deeper than she'd ever expected. She had always known that Alicia was the one everyone loved, the one everyone gravitated toward. But for the first time, Alicia's words felt like a direct attack on her soul, a blow that cut through the layers of control she had built around her emotions. "I'm not taking him from you," Rebecca responded, her voice trembling. "You've had him this whole time. What's it to you if I get a chance for once?" Alicia stepped closer, her eyes flashing with something darker now. "You think you deserve him, don't you? You think you're better than me, but you'll never be enough. You'll always be second best." The words hung in the air like a dangerous storm cloud, crackling with intensity. Rebecca's heart raced. She had never seen Alicia like this before. There was no humor in her eyes, no playfulness. Alicia was angry, and that anger was directed at her. Before Rebecca could respond, a loud crash echoed across the room. A glass had shattered, the party had fallen silent, and all eyes were now on the twins. The tension in the air was thick, like a blanket smothering the room, and then, with a look of sheer determination, Alicia turned and walked away, leaving Rebecca standing there, stunned and humiliated. The argument was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. Outside, the storm raged on. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows, and the rain came down in sheets. But inside, all that mattered was the fight between the two sisters. They were no longer just competing for Jake's affection. They were competing for something far deeper, for validation, for control, for a chance to be seen. The party continued without them, the guests oblivious to the battle that was unfolding. The twins slipped away from the crowd and made their way toward the woods. They were angry, filled with emotions neither one of them could fully control. What had started as a simple rivalry had escalated into something much darker, something dangerous. The woods were quiet, the only sound the rhythmic patter of rain against the ground. As they walked deeper into the forest, the world seemed to close in around them. The trees loomed over them like dark sentinels, their branches swaying in the wind. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, and for the first time, both sisters felt the weight of what they had done. They had crossed a line. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," Rebecca whispered, her voice breaking through the stillness. She hadn't meant to hurt Alicia. She hadn't meant for it to become this twisted, but the rivalry had consumed her, and now she could feel herself slipping into something darker. She wasn't sure who she was anymore. Alicia's laughter echoed through the trees, hollow and mocking. "You never learn, do you? You think you can take what's mine, but you'll always be left with nothing." Her words stung, but Rebecca didn't back down. Instead, she clenched her fists, the anger boiling within her. She had to prove herself. She couldn't let Alicia have everything, not this time, not again. They were too far from the party now, too far from the people who could stop them. The storm had swallowed them whole, leaving them alone in the dark, isolated from the world. The tension between them was unbearable, suffocating. The silence that followed their words was heavier than anything Rebecca had ever felt. And then, just as the storm seemed to reach its peak, everything changed. A loud crash echoed through the woods, the unmistakable sound of something breaking, and then came the sound of struggle, of bodies crashing against trees, branches snapping, and frantic breaths cutting through the night air. The sisters were no longer just fighting words, they were fighting for their lives. In that moment, the game was no longer a game, it had become something else. Something primal. Rebecca found herself on the ground, her hands trembling as she tried to push herself up. The rain poured down on her, mixing with the tears she hadn't even realized she was shedding. She could hear Alicia's voice, faint, distant, but it wasn't the same voice. It was panicked, terrified. I didn't mean to, Alicia cried out, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. The anger, the jealousy, the rivalry, it had all culminated in that one fatal moment. The rain washed away the blood, but it could not wash away the truth. The morning after Rebecca's tragic death, the town of Willow Creek was plunged into a whirlwind of questions and confusion. What had happened in those woods? How had things escalated so quickly? Alicia's story of a tragic accident began to unravel, and the chilling truth came to light, one that would leave the town forever scarred. The investigation took a turn that no one saw coming. Alicia's defense of an unfortunate accident began to fall apart as more evidence came to light. Text messages, photos, her own words, each piece revealing something far darker than anyone had imagined. Alicia had planned everything. She had lured her sister into the woods that night under the pretense of making amends. But the truth was far more chilling. This wasn't just a fight over Jake or the bitter rivalry that had been brewing for years. This was premeditated. In the days leading up to that fatal night, Alicia had been sending cryptic messages. She had grown paranoid, obsessed with the idea that Rebecca was trying to steal everything from her. Everything. Jake, the attention, even their family's love. But Alicia's jealousy went deeper than that. She had begun to unravel, consumed by a toxic mixture of envy, rage, and obsession. The police uncovered more than just messages. Alicia's phone revealed pictures she had taken of Rebecca from afar, moments that seemed innocent enough at first, but upon closer inspection, painted a haunting picture of someone watching their twin with growing malice. Alicia's premeditation was undeniable. In court, Alicia's defense team attempted to argue that Rebecca had attacked first, claiming it was a case of self-defense. They painted Alicia as a victim of a sister who had pushed her too far, but the evidence didn't match the story. Alicia's fingerprints were found on the weapon, a sharp object she had grabbed in a fit of rage. The marks on Rebecca's body were consistent with a struggle, not an accidental fall. Alicia's cold demeanor on the stand only worsened her case, while her defense painted her as a scared young woman caught in a moment of desperation. Her detached responses and refusal to take responsibility spoke volumes. It became clear that Alicia wasn't just trying to protect herself, she was trying to maintain control of the narrative. The jury didn't buy it. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. The evidence was overwhelming. Alicia was convicted of second-degree murder, her actions considered to be a result of uncontrollable rage, but not premeditated to the level of first-degree murder. Her conviction was a shock, but in the end it was clear justice had been served. Alicia was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Her family, shattered by the loss of Rebecca and the betrayal of their own daughter, had to come to terms with the fact that the twin they had raised together, bonded by blood and history, was the one who had taken her sister's life. The town of Willow Creek would never be the same. The once close-knit community was torn apart by the shocking tragedy that had unfolded. The story of the twins, of their rivalry, and of the love turned into rage, was now a dark chapter in the town's history. What had started as a battle for Jake's attention had escalated into something far more sinister. It was a lesson the people of Willow Creek would never forget. But even as Alicia's fate was sealed, the questions lingered. What could have driven a sister to kill another? Was it just jealousy, or something deeper? And what does this tragedy say about the lengths people will go to when they feel they've lost control of everything they hold dear? As Alicia was led away, her fate was sealed, but the questions remained unanswered. How many more lives would be torn apart by the seeds of rivalry, obsession, and jealousy? And what price would the town of Willow Creek pay for the secrets they had uncovered? Do you believe that jealousy and rivalry can truly drive someone to commit such a heinous act? Or was this a story of something deeper, something darker? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you think a person's obsession with control can destroy not only their relationships but their entire future, don't forget to subscribe.